else think that Anti-Clog sounds like some kind of product you'd buy for your toilet? No, just me? Okay. What's going on, guys? Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feed video of a brand new Mercurial variant that up until this point has been left exclusive to pro players, but you can now get it with a bit of a twist. And of course, I'm talking about the brand new Nike Mercurial Superfly 7 Elite with the split sole soft ground pro anti-clog system. When Nike reintroduced the split sole in the Mercurial series with the Superfly 6 and Vapor 12, when it came to the soft ground pro variation, the only version you could get was actually a full-length solid anti-clog soft ground pro sole plate, which added some significant weight to the boot, changed up the fit and feel as well, and it just wasn't very popular. Also didn't look all that great, where all the pros, or most of them, wearing the soft ground pro stud pattern, Cristiano Ronaldo being a very notable one, still maintained the split sole construction while also having the soft ground pro stud pattern, something that was never available to the public. With the new Superfly 7, they are now giving you a split sole soft ground pro layout, but they've also added their anti-clog technology and a sole plate variation that we have never seen before. So being that this is probably the most complicated soft ground pro setup ever to be featured on a pair of football boots, the question is it actually any good? So with that in mind, we're going to go over all the details, including how these fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, watch the entire video. And if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below. That's going to take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links for the Superfly as well as the Vapor 13 Elite in the two launch colorways with this anti-clog split sole soft ground pro stud pattern. Keep in mind though, as of right now, they are only available in Europe. Whether or not they'll be available in the US at any point in time in the future, not entirely sure, but if you want a pair, first link down below. If you guys do end up enjoying this video and perhaps would like to see more reviews of boots with different stud patterns aside from just FG, don't forget to support this one with a like and let me know specifically what you want to see down below in the comments. Also, if you're new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on daily content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. So included with the boots is a box, but not just any box, because this one has Anti-Clog. Because these are soft ground boots, they also give you a stud wrench for the removable metal studs. And they also include an extra set of slightly longer studs, these being 13 and 15 millimeter in length, just slightly longer than the ones already on the boots. And you also get a string bag. This one we've gone over in previous videos. It gets a whatever out of 9. As for the boots themselves, first things first, I want to get this out of the way. The upper, even though this is the soft ground pro variation, is identical to what you'll find on the FG model. What is different though is the sole plate, and I realize it's a split sole that's supposed to be as close to the FG model as possible, and in regards to design, yeah, it does look similar, but in terms of the construction of this split sole, all the materials used are completely different, and while it does admittedly feel similar, it's definitely not exactly the same. One of the big differences is one that you can't see from the outside of the boot, and that is the sole plate base. If I remove the insole, you can actually see it is a white plastic, which is typically what you will not find. It's actually a little bit of a thicker plastic base as well. So even though it's a split sole, there's still a main sole plate that runs from heel to toe as the base for the boots. Because this is a soft ground pro stud pattern where you do have these screw-in metal studs, you just need to have a thicker sole plate base, which is exactly what Nike have done. Also, one of the appeals of the FG model is that it has that anatomic sole plate base. This does have that to a certain extent, although I will admit that it doesn't feel quite as extreme or as noticeable, I guess I should say, as the FG model. However, it does feel a lot more similar to the FG model versus what we had with the previous generation anti-clog sole plate. As for the stud pattern, it is classic Mercurial soft ground pro. They really haven't changed anything from the previous generation. Yes, it's now a split sole, but the layout is identical. You're going to find 6 screw-in metal studs, 4 in the forefoot, 2 in the heel, and you're going to find molded bladed studs kind of surrounding the metal ones to make for a slightly more, I guess, FG-esque sensation on the ball as well as underfoot. This is a stud pattern that you would use on soft natural grass playing surfaces where a normal FG boot just wouldn't have studs that are long enough to provide enough grip. So you need slightly longer studs. That's what soft ground stud patterns are supposed to provide, and that's exactly what they do. From a traction standpoint, I've said this for a very long time, I really don't think that there's a lot that separates one soft ground stud pattern from the next. They're all kind of variations of the exact same thing, and they all do their job. You're not going to find as much variety from a traction standpoint with soft ground stud patterns as you will with FG stud patterns. So if you're playing on soft ground, this is an ideal layout. And just to be clear, this is not a stud pattern that you should be using on any other surface that isn't soft natural grass. It's not for firm ground, it's not for hard ground, and it's certainly not for artificial grass. Which brings us to arguably the most interesting aspect of this sole plate and stud pattern, and that is the anti-clog technology, which is very clearly marked here in the forefoot. And I guess I should point out that this is an anti-clog sole plate that is not black in color, unlike every other one that has released up until this point. I think we all kind of assumed, at least I did, that the anti-clog technology needed to be black just based on the material that they were using. Obviously that's not the case, or at least it's not the case anymore, because this does have a blue sole plate in the forefoot and a white sole plate in the heel. So it's not really an anti-clog sole plate, it's more so two anti-clog stud plates. And if you look very closely, you can actually see which parts are just glossy plastic, a normal sole plate, and which parts have that anti-clog covering to them. So it's not entirely covered in that anti-clog finish. Even around the edges, it does have some exposed glossy plastic, which mud will stick to those surfaces. But basically the way that anti-clog does work is this finish that they've applied to the sole plate, when water comes in contact with it, it lubricates the surface in such a way that does not allow mud or dirt to stick to the sole plate and clog up the stud pattern, which can result in obviously more weight on your feet that you're carrying around, as well as limiting the traction of the boot, because if the entire bottom of the boot is covered in a thick layer of mud, the studs are not going to be that effective. Does the technology actually work? Yes, but is it as effective in split sole form? I would argue no. And I should also mention that there are some rules that come along with the anti-clog sole plate listed here on the underside of the box. You can see it says works best when wet. For optimal performance, ensure the plate is wet and clean before use. Do not use abrasive cloths or brushes. So kind of like I talked about, the effectiveness of this anti-clog technology is going to be based on keeping this anti-clog surface as clean and smooth as possible. So you want to avoid anything abrasive, which is why you would not want to wear these on a firm natural grass or certainly an artificial grass playing surface, because you would absolutely destroy the finish. You want to avoid brushing it with anything that's super abrasive, and even clapping the boots together, having these metal studs scrape up the surface. That's also going to hurt the effectiveness of this anti-clog sole plate. As long as you're wearing these exclusively on soft ground, the ground being soft, therefore not abrasive, you shouldn't have too many issues with the durability of the anti-clog surface, which means that they shouldn't clog up. Anti-clog is one of those rare football boot technologies that actually does what it's supposed to do. Is it a true advantage? I guess you could make the argument that if your boots aren't clogged with mud and your opponents are, you are going to be at an advantage when it comes to overall traction. That's not to say that if you don't have anti-clog, you're totally missing out, but from the perspective of not having mud clogging up the bottom of your boots, this legitimately does work. There is one downside, however, and that's the weight. And obviously when you compare a soft ground boot to a firm ground boot, even if it's the same model, the soft ground boot is always going to weigh a little bit more, just because you have to have a thicker plastic sole plate to hold the soft ground stud patterns, the screw-in points. That adds weight. The studs in general are just heavier than molded plastic ones. So in a size 9.5 US, the Anti-Clog Soft Ground Pro Superfly 7 Elite weighs in at 8.75 ounces, the equivalent of 248 grams, which is roughly about 0.7 ounces more than the firm ground variation of the exact same football boot in the same size. That's a significant weight difference, obviously in favor of the firm ground variation, and it's a weight difference that you'll definitely notice on feet. When playing in soft ground conditions, however, this is definitely going to offer a lot better traction. Just keep in mind the soft ground version is not quite as light as the FG model. Now I know what you're thinking, why would I put black laces on boots that don't have any black? Well, the Soft Ground Pro version does have black studs, so there's that. But the stock laces are this light blue color, and if you're wearing these soft ground boots on soft ground, there's going to be a muddy environment, and typically the first thing to get dirty are the laces, especially if they're a light color, which these are. So the logic is that if you went with some black laces, your laces will never look dirty. Plus, I actually think they look quite good on the boots. It contrasts very nicely with the white and blue that you have throughout the entire upper. Plus it adds the reflective bits and it makes your boots look that much more unique in comparison to everyone else. So if you're interested in changing up the style of your boots in a very inexpensive way, the website to visit is www.sr4ulaces.com. There'll be a little pop-up on screen as well as a link down below in the description. So if you're interested in some for yourself, be sure to go ahead and check that out. On feet, the Superfly 7 feels really, really good. There is a difference though when you go from the firm ground model to this Anti-Clog soft ground variation. The first thing you'll notice is that the sole plate is not as anatomically shaped. It's more flat, meaning just a little bit more traditional in comparison to a regular pair of FG Mercurials. Number two, the sole plate is actually a little bit thicker, which is pretty common for just about any soft ground boot, so that's not too surprising. Number three, the final difference is that the boot does seem to be slightly wider for whatever reason. The sole plate base seems to be just a touch different in comparison to the FG model, but as a whole, the fit has not suffered. It still has a tight wrap. It's a lowered volume fit in comparison to the previous generation of Mercurials, and they just wrap your foot very, very closely, giving you that second skin feel while also maintaining a soft ground stud pattern with the split sole design. As far as the width is concerned, it's a tight fitting boot, so if you have really wide feet, even though the soft ground model does seem to be a little bit wider, probably not a great option for wide feet, especially if you don't like very tight fitting boots. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you're looking to order a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, aside from the weight increase, which I expected anyways, this is a huge improvement over the Soft Ground Pro Anti-Clog variants of the Superfly 7 Elite that were offered in the previous generation. Not only does this have the same upper as the firm ground model, it has, for the most part, the exact same fit and feel. It gives you that Mercurial experience rather than the much more clunky setup that you had with that standard Anti-Clog sole plate that just wasn't made to fit the low-profile, sleek Mercurial upper. They have now fixed that with the Superfly 7 Elite, and the traction is better than ever. I think the inclusion of Anti-Clog technology is not only really interesting, not only really cool, but actually effective in the way that they've done it here. And I think if you're after a pair of Mercurials with a soft ground stud pattern, you're really not going to find anything better than this. I think this is arguably the best soft ground layout ever found on a pair of Mercurials. I guess I should also mention that the Superfly and the Vapor, this latest generation of Mercurials, are really, really good. And if you are looking for more specific details on what these are all about, I'm going to leave a little pop-up on screen to my review of the FG model, where I go over absolutely everything that you need to know, at least when it comes to the upper. Anyways, guys, that's it for my review. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. Again, if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, you can click the first link down below. That's going to take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links for the Anti-Clog Soft Ground Pro Superfly and or Vapor in the two launch colorways, the blue ones or the blackouts. First link down below, go ahead and check that out. If you have any questions, as always, leave them down below in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.